Rain lashed down, relentless and unforgiving, turning the city into a watery maze. Emily, soaked and frustrated, watched her bus disappear into the night, its tail lights fading like distant stars. She felt a pang of helplessness, knowing she was stranded. Her phone showed 11:55 p.m. She sighed, cursing her luck. The digital numbers glowed mockingly, reminding her of the late hour and her dwindling options. The next bus wasn't for another hour. The timetable seemed to taunt her, each minute stretching into an eternity. A nearby sign, barely visible in the dim light, pointed towards a train station. It was her only glimmer of hope in the oppressive darkness. Desperation gnawed at her. She had to get home. The thought of spending the night in the rain was unbearable. Emily started walking, each step heavy with dread. The rain pounded on her umbrella, a constant reminder of her predicament. The rain intensified, blurring the world into a canvas of greys and blacks. Streetlights flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced in the downpour. A chill wind whipped through the deserted streets, carrying the promise of something sinister. The howling gusts seemed to whisper secrets of the night. The train station, her only hope now, loomed ahead, shrouded in an unnatural darkness. It stood like a monolith, a beacon of both salvation and dread. Emily quickened her pace, her heart pounding in her chest, hoping that the station would offer refuge from the storm and the unknown terrors of the night. The station was eerily deserted. A lone flickering lamp cast long dancing shadows. Cobwebs draped the ticket booth, thick with dust. The air hung heavy, thick with the smell of dampness and decay. Unease tightened its grip on Emily's heart. She walked towards the edge of the platform. Below, the tracks stretched into the darkness, swallowed by the night. A low rumble echoed in the distance, growing louder. Relief, unexpected and sharp, pierced through Emily's fear. A train, against all odds, was coming. With a deafening screech, the train burst from the darkness. It looked ancient, a relic from a bygone era. Its windows, dark and lifeless, were like the eyes of a predator. Emily hesitated, a shiver running down her spine. The train screeched to a halt, its brakes groaning in protest. The doors hissed open, releasing a gust of stale, cold air. Emily, her heart pounding, stepped inside. The doors slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate. The carriage was dimly lit, the air thick with dust, and the silence broken only by the rhythmic clatter of the train. Shadows danced in the corners, playing tricks on her eyes. Emily sat alone, clutching her bag tightly. At the far end of the carriage, shrouded in shadows, sat a figure. He was tall and thin, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. Emily couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched, her unease growing with each passing moment. Section 5, Whispers in the Dark. The train rattled on, the scenery outside a blur of darkness. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels on the tracks was the only sound breaking the oppressive silence of the night. The landscape outside was a void, an endless expanse of blackness that seemed to swallow the train whole. Emily tried to distract herself, but the figure at the end of the carriage held her captive with an unseen gaze. She had boarded the train hoping for a quiet journey, but now she found herself trapped in a waking nightmare. The figure was barely visible, a shadow among shadows, yet its presence was undeniable. She could feel his presence, heavy and oppressive. It was as if the very air around her had thickened, making it hard to breathe. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but there was nowhere to go. The train was a moving prison, and she was its captive. A low whisper, barely audible, seemed to emanate from his direction. It was a sound that seemed to bypass her ears and go straight to her soul, filling her with a dread she couldn't shake. The whisper was like a dark secret, a forbidden knowledge that she was never meant to hear. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She felt as if she were on the edge of a precipice, teetering on the brink of an abyss. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat a painful reminder of her vulnerability. She strained to hear, fear constricting her chest. The whisper was faint, almost indistinguishable from the ambient noise of the train. Yet it was there, persistent and insistent. It was a voice that seemed to come from the depths of time, ancient and malevolent. The whisper came again, a sibilant murmur that sent shivers crawling down her spine. It was a sound that seemed to promise unspeakable horrors, a prelude to something far worse. Emily felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead, her body reacting to a fear that was both primal and profound. It seemed to speak of forgotten things, of ancient evils lurking in the shadows. The train, once a symbol of progress and modernity, had become a vessel for something dark and sinister. Emily knew she had to find a way to escape, but the question was how. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if urging her to uncover the secrets that lay hidden in the dark. Section 6. Sudden Stop. The train lurched violently, throwing Emily forward. She gripped the seat, her heart pounding against her ribs. The lights flickered, plunged the carriage into darkness for a fleeting moment before sputtering back to life. The train shuddered to a halt, the silence deafening. Outside, the only sound was the howling wind. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Emily's resolve. She was trapped, alone in the darkness with an unknown entity. Section 7. Flickering lights, mounting fear. The lights flickered again, this time dying completely, plunging the carriage into absolute darkness. A cold sweat broke out on Emily's skin. She fumbled for her phone, its dim light a beacon in the suffocating blackness. The whispers started again, closer now, seeming to slither from the very air itself. Emily felt a presence moving towards her, slow and deliberate, each step sending chills down her spine. She scrambled to her feet, her back against the cold window. Section 8. A desperate escape. Panic surged through Emily. She had to escape, had to get away from the whispers, from the unseen terror closing in. She stumbled down the aisle, her hand trailing along the cold, damp seats. The figure was closer now, his presence suffocating. Suddenly, a door at the end of the carriage creaked open. A sliver of moonlight sliced through the darkness, revealing a set of rickety steps leading outside. Emily didn't hesitate. She ran towards the light, her lungs burning, her legs screaming for respite. Section 9. Reaching safety? Emily burst out of the train, stumbling onto the gravel beside the tracks. She didn't look back, didn't dare to see if she was being pursued. She ran until her lungs screamed for air, until her legs gave way beneath her. She lay there, gasping for breath, the cold night air stinging her lungs. The silence was deafening, broken only by the pounding of her own heart. Was she safe? Had she escaped the nightmare? Section 10. Lingering unease. As Emily slowly sat up, she noticed something lying on the ground beside her. Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to make sense of the shadowy figure that seemed to loom over her. The darkness of the room felt suffocating, pressing in on her from all sides. It was a hat, a wide-brimmed hat, just like the one worn by the figure on the train. The sight of it sent a shiver down her spine, a cold reminder of the eerie encounter she had tried so hard to forget. The hat seemed almost alive, pulsating with a sinister energy that made her skin crawl. She stared at it, her blood turning to ice. The memories of that night came flooding back, each one more terrifying than the last. She could almost hear the haunting whispers that had followed her, feel the cold breath on the back of her neck. Her eyes widened in fear, unable to look away from the hat. A cold wind swept across the desolate landscape, carrying with it the faint echo of a whisper. The trees swayed ominously, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out to her. The night was alive with unseen terrors, each one more horrifying than the last. The wind seemed to carry voices, ghostly murmurs that sent chills down her spine. Emily was safe for now, but the sense of relief was fleeting, overshadowed by the lingering dread that clung to her like a second skin. She knew that the danger was far from over, that the shadows still held secrets that could destroy her. Her mind raced with thoughts of what could come next, each one more terrifying than the last. But the memory of the last train home, the chilling presence in the shadows, would forever haunt her dreams. The nightmare wasn't over. The figure on the train with its piercing gaze and malevolent aura was etched into her mind. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the lights brought her back to that moment of pure terror. It had only just begun. The clock struck midnight, marking the beginning of a new chapter in her ordeal. The train tracks, empty and foreboding, seemed to stretch into infinity, a path leading to unknown horrors. The sky above was dark and ominous, a reflection of the turmoil within her. Emily knew that she was on a journey with no end in sight, a journey into the heart of darkness.